Hey guys, it's Miss Vinson. Today we're going to talk about another market structure, so our third market structure called Monopolistic Competition. We've studied perfect competition so well, and then we've studied monopolies in detail. And so all monopolistic competition is a blending of those two very different market structures. Monopolistic competition does have many firms in the industry. That's why it has the word competition in the name, because a lot of firms really are competing against each other for customers. But what makes it monopolistic? Well, in this case, guys, the products they're selling are not identical. They're not perfect competitors for each other. The products they're selling are differentiated. That's a very important word for you to know with monopolistic competition. What this means is that everybody's product in this market, they're similar, but each one is just a little bit different. A great example of this would be like the fast food industry. If you think about going down like a main city street, there's tons of fast food restaurants that you probably pass. There's a Burger King, there's a Hardee's, there's McDonald's, there's Jack in the Box. All of these places are fast food restaurants, and all of them you could generally get just about the same thing. A hamburger and some fries, chicken nuggets, something else. But Burger King is home of the Whopper, and McDonald's has the Big Mac, and Hardee's has whatever they have, all right? And Jack in the Box, they have their special things too. And so even though they're all selling similar products, not everybody's hamburger is exactly the same. And you know this to be true because you know there are some people, they would go to McDonald's, but they wouldn't walk into a Hardee's or a Jack in the Box. And it is just pretty much the same thing, but some people will swear, no, it's not, it's completely different. And so this brings us to another point about monopolistic competition. Not only are there many sellers who are selling slightly different products, there's product differentiation, but this product differentiation is what gives them market power. These are like many monopolies over their individual specific product, so they are not price takers, they are price makers. Since they are the only place that customers can go to get their specific product, like the Whopper or the Big Mac, then they can set their own price. Now, of course, they have to set their own price within reason. You can't set your hamburger price at $20 a hamburger while your competitors are at like $3 to $4 for a hamburger. But you don't have to stick with the exact same price as them either. You don't have to take a market price or lose all your customers. And so you are facing competition. You do want to keep your price relatively close to your competitors, but you do have some freedom in the price you charge, and that freedom comes from the fact that you're like a mini monopoly over your specific product. So that product differentiation makes them a price maker and gives them market power. And these firms, they want to exaggerate this product differentiation. And so advertising is a huge deal in monopolistic competition. They're going to have all kinds of commercials and all kinds of ads to convince you that their product is different from all of the others. And they want to really drum up and encourage brand loyalty, because a lot of times if you have brand loyalty, you can charge a higher price, and if there's a whole bunch of loyalty to your brand, then customers will probably still pay that higher price just because they believe in your brand so much. So this is when customers, they're like, hey, why do you buy that instead of the cheap one? Well, I don't know, I just like this brand. You know, when they have this brand loyalty that's been developed through the advertising, the monopolistic competitor is in a good spot. Now, since a monopolistic competitor is a price maker, then the good news for us as students is the fact that our graphs are going to look the same as a monopolist graphs. We're still going to have our normal cost curves, and our demand curve is still going to be downward sloping, which is our price line, which is still our AR. And our MR is separate from our demand curve. So we have a downward sloping demand curve with a separate MR curve. Price is still greater than MR because if the monopolistic competitor wants to sell more units of output, then remember they have to lower their price on all of the other previous units as well. So the extra revenue is always less than the price that you get. The only difference with these graphs is perhaps your demand and your marginal revenue curves are a little flatter. If you wanted to draw those curves with a little less slope, a little flatter, you can kind of say that monopolistic competitors have a more elastic demand and therefore marginal revenue because there are competitors that they do have to deal with. However, you read the graph the same that you always did. A monopolistic competitor is going to want to produce where any business wants to produce, and that's at profit maximizing output level, which is where MR hits MC. So the monopolistic competitor, they're going to look where their MR hits their MC, they're going to drop down, and that's their Q star, that's their profit maximizing quantity, and they're going to go up to their demand curve to find their price, to find their profit maximizing price, just like a monopolist. So you can think about monopolists competition like a mini monopoly. Prices do tend to be higher in monopolistic competition, and there is less stuff available in monopolistic competition versus perfect competition. And so there is deadweight loss in monopolistic competition. So we're not allocatively efficient in monopolistic competition. Now, what about the short run and long run? Short run's always easy, guys. All market structures have the same short run situation. All four types of markets can be earning positive profit in the short run, breaking even in the short run, loss but stay open because they can pay their variable cost in the short run, or a loss and you shut down temporarily for a season in the short run because you cannot pay your workers. And you can tell what situation a firm is in on their graph by looking at the location of their demand curve. If that demand curve is above the ATC at some output levels, then there are quantities where the monopolistic competitor can earn positive profit. If the demand curve just skims and brushes up against the ATC, then the best they can do is breaking even, which means your economic profit is zero. You're at your normal profits. If they're a loss, but they want to stay open, remember that demand curve is going to be below the ATC because it's a loss, but above the variable cost curve because there are output levels where they can pay their workers and maybe some of their fixed costs, so they're going into debt less than if they just shut down. And then finally, guys, if you can't pay your workers, if your demand curve is below your variable cost curve, then you should shut down temporarily in the short run. But now let's talk about the long run. Because this is monopolistic competition. Yeah, you're a mini monopoly. Yeah, you're making a product that's a little bit different from everybody else's, but you are facing competition. After all, it's monopolistic competition. There are many sellers in the market. Stop. Ask yourself, how did those many sellers get in the market in the first place? If there are many sellers in the market, it must mean that there are no barriers to entry. Why does it mean that? Well, how did all those people get in the market in the first place? It must have been easy to join. Because remember how we said, guys, people don't like to do hard things, people do the easy thing. So if there are many sellers in this market, it must mean that it was pretty easy to join. So anything that has the word competition in it, perfect competition or monopolistic competition, you really need to know that anything competition in the long run only has one situation that they can be in, and that is breaking even. Economic profits equals zero. Now, why does a monopolistic competitor have to break even? It's kind of the same story. It's just a little bit different than perfect competition. In this case, you're earning positive profits if you're a monopolistic competitor, and those positive profits do attract people into the industry, but you're not a price taker, you're a price maker. So you don't really have to worry about equilibrium price shifting. But think about what happens in the market, guys. If all of a sudden there's more sellers, that means that customers have more places to go to buy this similar item. Well, let's say that you're a fast food restaurant, and then on that same street, there are 10 other fast food restaurants that just opened up. Now customers have all these other choices. That is going to decrease customers' demand for your particular food. And so we know how to decrease demand. That's going to shift your demand curve for your product to the left, because customers have all these other choices now from these new firms that joined the market. So your demand curve is going to shift to the left. Now, if you were earning positive profit and you shift your demand curve to the left, eventually you're going to end up where it's just brushing up against the side of ATC, and that's just breaking even. Now, what if it goes so far and some firms are making losses? Well, you know the story. If some firms are making losses, then some firms are going to leave the industry. And whenever firms leave the industry, there's less sellers that are competing against you. And so that is going to shift customers' demand to the right for your product. Since there's less people selling food, customers are going to say, well, I guess I need to go to this place. And so the demand curve will shift to the right. So instead of making losses, that'll bring you back to brushing up against your ATC, which is breaking even. So we have this long run adjustment process, which is very similar to the long run adjustment process that we saw in perfect competition. And it's really based on the same thing. Can you keep people from joining your market? Just a couple of key things to remember about perfect competition. Just remember that the products are a little bit different. Advertising is really important, but reading the graphs, the profit maximization rule, the shutdown rule, they're all the same. And then the long run, anything competition, because of no barriers to entry, in the long run, they have to be breaking even just like perfect competition. All right, I know you got this, so I'll see you later.